Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? She sat 2 seats from the end, posture straight, notebook open, eyes fixed on the map glowing across the projector screen. Men's voices layered over one another, short, clipped, confident. Plans, coordinates, names of towns that would soon turn to echoes of smoke. Every word felt sharp, like it had been rehearsed 100 times before this moment. But none of them looked at her. Not once. Her pen tapped once against the margin of the page. A habit, a signal, a warning to herself to stay calm. The silence around her wasn't silence at all, it was deliberate. The kind of silence that could smother someone if they let it, but she'd been here before. A hand reached across the table, tracing a route on the map. Insertion here, sweep east, contact by 05. The room buzzed with nods, boots shifted, a cough, a throat clear, then more voices. She waited, listened, memorized every detail, even when none of it was directed toward her. And still, she couldn't stop hearing her mother's voice. "You don't belong in rooms like that, Anna. They'll never let you." Anna, that was her name here. Not captain, not pilot, not operative, just Anna. A name heavy with everything she'd chosen and everything she'd left behind. The silence broke when the colonel's voice landed. "We'll need Overwatch. 2 teams rotating every 6 hours. Anna, that'll be you." Finally her name, but not her presence. He didn't look at her when he said it. He didn't ask. It was a placement, not an invitation. She simply nodded. No argument, no hesitation. Just the sound of her pen scratching down the assignment as though she'd been waiting for it all along. And yet inside a different voice whispered, "They don't trust you. They'll send you where you can't change the outcome." The meeting broke. Chairs pushed back, boots scraped across concrete. The men left in pairs, talking, laughing, already assigning themselves victories that hadn't been won. She stayed seated a moment longer, staring at the empty map now fading to gray. She hadn't told them everything, not yet. Outside, the air smelled of dust and diesel. The outpost wasn't much, a skeleton of concrete, rusted rebar, canvas tarps rippling under a pale sun. Soldiers moved like shadows, their routines sharp, efficient, brittle. Anna walked past them with measured steps. She felt their eyes, the sideways glances, not hostile, not overt, just uncertain. The kind of uncertainty that came from not knowing whether to respect her or dismiss her. Her rifle case rested against the barracks wall. She unclipped it, let the weight settle into her hands. Smooth metal, black finish, polished by repetition. The one thing that didn't question her. The trigger never ignored her. Still, as she slung the weapon over her shoulder, she caught herself pausing, because something wasn't right. There had been a detail in the briefing, a name, a location. It hadn't sat well with her, like a stone in her boot she couldn't shake, but she'd held her tongue, because in that room silence was safer than questions. Now alone, she wondered, was it silence that would get them all killed?
Yeah.
She climbed the ladder to the watchtower. The wood creaked beneath her boots and the wind carried the smell of burnt oil and distant smoke. From here, the horizon stretched endless. Brown earth, jagged hills, a haze that never lifted even at midday. She set the rifle down, adjusted the scope, scanned, always scanning. The lens brought the world closer, yet never clearer. Shadows flickered in her peripheral, a shepherd's flock, children kicking a ball, a figure crouched by the ruins of a house. Harmless, maybe, or not. Her heartbeat slowed, training, discipline. She marked each movement, filed it away, let it breathe. Then she heard it. Not in the distance, not across the hills, but in her own head, her daughter's laugh. High-pitched, quick, the way it used to echo down the hallway of their small apartment when Anna came home late, boots still dusty, face still tired. The laugh that made her forget for a second that she was two people at once, soldier and mother. Now it was just memory. She closed her eyes for half a second too long, the scope blurred, the flock was gone, the children scattered, the crouched figure vanished. Her hand tightened on the stock of the rifle. She hadn't lost them. She couldn't. But the whisper came again. "What are you doing here, Anna? What about her?" Yeah. A radio crackled by her side. "Overwatch status." Her voice came steady, even, sector clear. But it was not in her mind, not in her chest. The rest of the day dragged, the sun sliding heavy across the sky. The silence of the desert pressed harder than gunfire ever could. She stayed still, patient, but her thoughts weren't. Because there was something she hadn't told them. The target wasn't just strategic. It wasn't just coordinates on a map. It was a name she'd heard before, a voice she couldn't forget. A man. A man who had once looked her in the eye and said, "You'll regret this choice. One day, they'll make you choose between them and your daughter." She never told command how she knew him, never told them what he'd said. Now here he was, somewhere in those hills, and she was the one holding the rifle. Yeah. That night, as the camp dimmed to lanterns and murmurs, she stayed in the tower. Sleep was for others. She let her mind wander in the way she never allowed when others were around. Her daughter's face, her mother's words, her own reflection in mirrors she'd long since stopped trusting. The silence was broken when footsteps climbed the ladder. Slow, deliberate, not hurried, not careless. She didn't turn. She already knew who it was. Long Day. The voice belonged to Sergeant Miller. Older, shoulders bent from years of carrying both packs and regrets. He stood beside her, looking out at the horizon. Not at her. Never at her. "You ever wonder," he said, voice low, "why some of us keep coming back here when everything worth keeping is somewhere else?" She didn't answer. He let out a dry laugh. "Thought so." For a moment, silence again, but a softer one, the kind that didn't weigh but lingered. Then he said, "You've got the look, same as I had, same as all of us had, like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, or maybe just waiting for someone to tell you you're allowed to leave." Her jaw tightened. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she was here for duty, for honor, for something larger than herself. But the words felt thin, brittle, breakable. So instead she asked, "And what did you do?" Miller's eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. "I didn't leave, that's the problem." He descended the ladder, his boots fading into the hum of night. She stayed, but his words clung to her like the dust in the air. Yeah. When dawn broke, the order came. Movement east, a convoy potential hostile. She adjusted the scope, breath steady, heartbeat calm. And then there he was. The man. Closer than she expected. Standing by a truck, face half hidden by a scarf but unmistakable, the tilt of his head, the way he carried himself. Her chest froze, her finger hovered. The voice echoed again, sharp as it had been years ago. "One day they'll make you choose." She exhaled, her sight locked in. And she realized this mission was never just about duty. It was about her daughter. What would she tell them if she pulled the trigger? The scope framed his silhouette with unnerving clarity. A scarf flapped in the dry wind, his hand resting casually on the door of the truck, as if time belonged to him alone. He was close enough that she could almost read the impatience in his eyes. Her finger curled, then froze. It wasn't fear, not the kind the others carried. This was different. This was recognition, and recognition made her dangerous. "Overwatch report," the radio hissed. Anna's throat tightened. She swallowed, lifted the receiver, and forced her voice steady. "Convoy east. 1 vehicle, 4 visible, possible hostile." Possible, that word gave her space. Space to breathe, to buy seconds to think. But thinking was a trap too, because every second she hesitated, the convoy moved. Every second she didn't act, the mission shifted further out of her control. Why him, why now? She lowered the scope for the briefest of moments. The desert blurred to its natural form, heat, haze, mirages, the endless hum of cicadas. Her palms felt damp against the rifle grip. The last time she'd seen him, there hadn't been sand. It had been a rain-soaked alley 2 countries away. He stood close enough to whisper, close enough to make the words sting. "You'll regret this. You'll regret choosing them over her." Yeah. The convoy began to move again. Dust plumes rose, curling into the sky like smoke from a fire no one wanted to admit existed. She steadied her rifle, tracked them east, calculated speed, trajectory, exit routes. Professional, detached, that was who she was supposed to be. But her heart carried something heavier than calculation. Her daughter's last drawing still sat folded in her chest pocket, a crude sketch of mountains and a stick-figure woman holding a stick-figure girl's hand. The paper was worn at the creases, fragile. She hadn't been able to throw it away. Couldn't, because it was the only piece of her daughter she could take here. And now, the man who once promised to rip that bond apart was in her crosshairs. Overwatch confirmed hostile status. The radio again, tighter this time. Someone wanted certainty. Anna's finger flexed, but before she could answer, movement caught her eye. The truck door opened, and a boy stepped out. 12, maybe 13. Thin arms, clothes hanging loose. He carried a jug of water stumbling under its weight. The man reached to steady him, his hand not rough, not hurried, but careful, almost fatherly. Her breath caught. The rifle's sight wavered. In that instant, she remembered her own daughter at that age, struggling with her backpack, waiting at the school gate. How Anna had bent to help her just once before missions had pulled her away again. The resemblance clawed at her. The radio demanded again, "Overwatch confirm." Her lips parted, but the words wouldn't form. She wasn't looking at an enemy anymore. She was looking at a story she wasn't ready to tell. Yeah. Boots sounded on the ladder, fast, urgent. Then Miller's voice, "What's going on?" He ducked into the tower, eyes scanning her face before he even reached for the binoculars. He knew something was off. Anna didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on the scope. "Convoy east," she said flatly. Miller raised the binoculars, tracked, focused. "Looks like supply, not military, you call it in yet." "Not hostile," she muttered. He lowered the binoculars, frowned. "That's not your call alone. I know what I see." He studied her. His gaze lingered too long, sharp enough to pierce the walls she built. Then he said quietly, "You see more than you're saying." The air tightened. The boy climbed back into the truck. The man, her ghost, her reminder, shut the door after him. And suddenly the convoy was gone. Dust swallowed them whole. Anna exhaled, her body trembling with the kind of tension that leaves scars. Miller didn't press. Not yet. But his silence was heavy, weighted with questions he'd only ask when no one else was listening. Yeah. Night again. The outpost hummed with low voices and clinking mess tins. Anna sat alone, back against the wall, meal untouched. The others laughed around a table, a private world of camaraderie she had never been invited into. She didn't envy them, not exactly. But there was an ache she couldn't name, a longing for something simple, unshattered. Miller slid onto the bench across from her. He didn't ask permission, didn't need to. "You froze," he said. Her jaw clenched. "I didn't." "You hesitated, that's enough. Want to tell me why?" She didn't answer. Silence was safer. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Listen, I've been where you are, thinking too much about what's behind the scope, about who they are, not just what they are. You let it fester, it'll eat you alive." Her eyes flicked to him. "And what did it eat out of you?" Miller's gaze dropped to his hands. His fingers twitched, restless, as though trying to shake something loose. "A boy," he said finally. "Could have been my son's age. I pulled the trigger. Never stopped seeing his face after. Never stopped wondering if he even had a choice in being there." Anna felt her chest tighten. He met her eyes again. "Don't let it fester. Either you take the shot or you don't. But don't live in the middle. The middle is where the ghosts pile up." She swallowed hard. The middle. That's where she lived every day, between soldier and mother, between duty and regret, between silence and confession. But she couldn't tell him the truth, not yet. Because the man she'd seen wasn't just another ghost. He was flesh, blood, history. Yeah. At dawn, orders shifted. Patrol east. Small team. Search for caches. Disrupt supply. She was assigned. Miller too. The desert opened before them, endless and raw. The crunch of boots over gravel filled the silence, punctuated by the hum of flies and the distant bark of dogs in villages scattered like bones. Anna scanned the ridges. Every shadow seemed like a secret, every echo a warning. They moved cautiously, weapons raised, eyes restless. And yet beneath the discipline her mind drifted back to the convoy, to the boy, to the man. Was it coincidence? Or was fate mocking her, drawing her into a story she tried to bury? The team paused at a ruin, walls crumbled to jagged teeth. Miller motioned her forward. She crouched low, rifle sweeping the angles. Her breath slowed, heart synced with each step. Inside, dust swirled in beams of sunlight. A child's shoe lay half buried, a rusted kettle, remnants of lives erased. She touched the shoe just for a second. The leather cracked under her fingers, a reminder, a weight. Then voices faint outside. She froze, raised her hand, the team stilled. Footsteps approached. Anna's body coiled, rifle lifted. Through the crack in the wall she saw them. Two men, one of them him. Her chest clenched, her vision tunneled. Closer now, she could hear their words, foreign, familiar. She remembered the cadence, the rhythm. She remembered how his voice had sounded when it spoke her name years ago. Miller glanced at her. He was waiting for her call, trusting her eyes, her judgment. Her finger hovered, her breath caught. But the boy appeared again, following them, clutching a bundle of cloth. Anna's chest tore open inside. This wasn't war anymore. This was a reckoning. Yeah. Her mind screamed two truths at once. Take the shot, don't. Duty clashed with blood, past clashed with present, and behind it all her daughter's face flickered in memory, fragile as smoke. She knew in that moment that whatever choice she made, nothing would ever be the same. How do you aim at a man who once knew your name? The crosshairs traced his shoulder, steady but not still. The weight of the rifle pressed into her bones, but the weight of the moment pressed harder. Anna's breath slowed, controlled, but her chest burned with the kind of restraint that felt like drowning. The man leaned against the crumbled wall, speaking low to the other fighter. His scarf shifted, the lines of his face catching sunlight. She saw the same eyes she remembered, dark, sharp, unyielding. Eyes that had once cornered her in a rain-soaked alley and carved their threat into her memory. And just behind him, the boy. Small, fragile, clutching the bundle like it was worth more than his life. His steps uncertain, his gaze drifting anywhere but the rifles in men's hands. Anna's finger pressed to the trigger, a millimeter of pressure, a fraction, enough to end the man who haunted her, enough to protect the team, enough to cut away the question of loyalty that gnawed at her, but also enough to shatter the boy's world forever. Take it, Miller whispered beside her, clean shot. His voice was steady, detached. He didn't see the history, didn't hear the echo of old threats, didn't know the promise that bound her to silence. Her eye blinked, her scope blurred. She pulled back, heart hammering. Not clean, she muttered. Miller frowned, lifted his own sightline. What are you talking about? He's right there. She swallowed, forcing steel into her voice. Not clean, not yet. Yeah. The men moved on, unaware of the eyes watching them. Their voices faded into the desert's heavy silence. The boy trailed after them, stumbling in the sand. Anna lowered her rifle, her shoulders trembling under the invisible weight of the decision she hadn't made. Miller's gaze burned into her. You saw something I didn't. Her jaw locked. Drop it. He didn't argue, but his silence wasn't agreement. It was a note filed away, waiting. Yeah. Back at the outpost, the debrief was uneventful. The patrol reported empty ruins, shifting dust, and nothing more. No mention of the man, no mention of the boy. Anna wrote the report with mechanical precision, her pen moving faster than her thoughts. She didn't add the detail she carried. Couldn't. To write it would be to explain it. To explain it would be to confess. And confession meant questions she wasn't ready to answer. When the room emptied, she lingered. The map glowed faintly under the projector. Lines, routes, coordinates, but her eyes weren't on the map. They were on the blank space beyond it, the places they hadn't marked, the places where ghosts lived. Her hand slipped into her pocket, pulling out the folded drawing. The stick figures smiled up at her, a simple world untouched by rifles and radios. She brushed her thumb across the crayon lines, her throat tightening. What would her daughter think if she knew?
Yeah.
That night she didn't sleep. The outpost hummed around her, men shifting in bunks, boots thudding on gravel outside. She sat by the small desk in her quarters, staring at the cracked wall, listening to the sound of her own breath. She remembered the day she left. Her daughter had been standing in the doorway, hair still tangled from sleep, eyes wide with questions she never spoke. Anna had knelt, tied the shoelaces on her sneakers with trembling hands, and whispered, "I'll be back before you know it." But she hadn't been back, not in time. Her mother's voice echoed in memory, harsh, cutting. "You can't be both. Not the way they want you to be. They'll strip you down to duty and she'll pay the price." Anna pressed her palms into her eyes, pushing the memory away. But memories don't vanish. They sink deeper, heavier, until they weigh more than the rifle she carried.
Yeah.
At dawn, the colonel called for her. The operations tent smelled of sweat, canvas, and burnt coffee. He stood over the map, his finger tracing routes with the impatience of a man chasing time. "Intel places a cell east of your patrol zone," he said. "You'll lead a team tonight. Intercept before they can move supplies north." Her chest tightened. East, always east. The desert felt endless, but fate kept circling her back to the same horizon. She nodded, "Yes, sir." His eyes flicked up, brief, sharp, "Don't hesitate this time." The words sliced deeper than he knew.
Yeah.
The team assembled at dusk. Miller adjusted his vest, checked his weapon, glanced at her. He didn't speak, but his eyes asked everything his mouth didn't. The night air was thick, heavy with dust. The desert seemed to breathe around them, alive with whispers of unseen things. Their boots crunched over gravel, their rifles gleamed faint in the moonlight. They moved silent, shadows among shadows. Every sound magnified, the click of a safety, the rustle of fabric, the distant bark of a stray dog. Anna's pulse thudded steady, but beneath it was the echo of her daughter's laugh, always there, always pulling. They reached the ridge overlooking a narrow valley. Below, lanterns flickered among tents. Figures moved, small fires burning. Anna raised her scope, her breath caught. The man was there, again. And the boy. Her stomach clenched. This wasn't coincidence. This was something else. A thread tying her past and present together, refusing to let her cut it loose. She whispered into the radio. "Target sighted, East Valley, multiple hostiles." Her finger rested on the trigger, but her heart screamed a different command.
Yeah.
"Take the shot." The colonel's voice cracked over the radio, distant but commanding. Anna froze. The boy was carrying the bundle again. This time she saw what it was, a blanket. Folded, frayed, but clearly treasured. He set it down carefully as though it were sacred. The man touched the boy's shoulder, protective, possessive, fatherly. Her scope trembled. She remembered her daughter clinging to her blanket the night she left. The way she'd pressed it to her face, trying to keep her mother's scent a little longer. Anna's throat closed. She couldn't breathe, couldn't shoot, couldn't decide. Miller's voice broke through, low, urgent. "Anna, don't freeze again." Her finger pressed, just enough for the rifle to whisper against her skin. Her eyes stung, because she realized the truth. If she pulled the trigger, she wouldn't just kill a man. She'd kill the last fragile piece of herself that still belonged to her daughter.
The
The radio demanded again, "Take it." Her chest heaved, her finger twitched. But she didn't fire. Not yet. Because there was something she hadn't told them. Not about the man, not about the boy, not about the threat that had been made years ago in the shadows of another war. And until she spoke it aloud, the shot would never be clean. What happens when silence becomes heavier than the bullet you refuse to fire? The ridge was still, the valley below alive with faint lanterns and shadows. Anna's rifle pressed into her shoulder, her breath steady in rhythm but uneven in truth. The crosshairs hovered, the boy's blanket stark against the dirt, the man's hand heavy on his shoulder. And Anna's finger didn't move. Static cracked in her earpiece. "Overwatch, what's your delay?" The colonel's voice was sharp, clinical, the sound of someone who couldn't see the ghost standing in her crosshairs. She swallowed, her throat raw. "Not clear," she said. A pause, then sharper, "Clarify." Her chest tightened. She could feel Miller's stare burning into her. She didn't turn, didn't explain, couldn't, because explanation meant revealing too much. "Possible civilian," she said finally. The pause stretched, then the colonel's voice cut like a blade. "We don't have the luxury of maybes. Confirm and execute." The words rang in her ears, long after the radio went silent. But the lanterns below flickered out. One by one, the valley swallowed its own fire, retreating into shadows. By the time Anna steadied her scope again, the figures were gone. Another ghost slipping through her fingers.
The
Back at the outpost, tension coiled tighter than wire. Reports were filed, voices clashed intense, boots stomped louder than usual. Anna walked through it like a shadow, silent, unreadable, unreachable. Miller caught up to her near the tower. What the hell was that? She didn't stop walking, not clean. "That's twice now." His voice was low but sharp. "Twice you let the shot go. What aren't you telling me?" Her pace slowed. She turned just enough to meet his eyes. "Do you trust your instincts, Miller?" He blinked. "Depends on the day." "Then trust mine." She walked on, leaving him with the dust and his own doubts.
the
But that night, alone in her quarters, the silence closed in again. She sat on the edge of the cot, boots still on, rifle leaning against the wall. Her hand slipped into her pocket, pulling out the drawing again. The crayon lines blurred from where, but the figures still smiled, still held hands, still existed in a world that didn't know what choice meant. Her vision blurred. She pressed the paper to her forehead, her breath shuddering. And then, unbidden, memory opened its door.
the
It was 3 years ago. Rain hammered down, cold and relentless. The alley stank of rust and sewage, walls dripping, puddles reflecting broken light. She'd cornered him then, the man now haunting her scope. His weapon lay at his feet, his scarf half torn, his eyes furious but unbroken. She'd been younger, sharper, more certain. "You're done," she'd said, rifle steady on him. But he hadn't begged, he hadn't pleaded, he'd smiled. "You think you've won, but you'll leave, and when you do, you'll leave something behind, something you can't protect." She hadn't understood then. She thought it was just another threat, another tactic, but his voice had carried a certainty she couldn't shake. "Your daughter," he'd said softly, almost tenderly. "One day they'll make you choose between her and this uniform, and when that day comes, you won't be able to live with yourself." Before she could respond, backup arrived. He slipped into the chaos like smoke, disappearing into the storm. And she'd told no one, not command, not even her mother, because to tell it would be to admit her daughter was a weakness, a target. Her silence had protected them both. Until now.
the
She woke to pounding on her door. "Briefing in 5. The voice was curt, impatient. She splashed water on her face, stared at the cracked mirror. Her reflection looked harder than she felt. Shadows under her eyes, jaw set, lips pressed thin. A soldier's mask, not a mother's face. The briefing was short, urgent. Intel had confirmed movement east, again east. Supplies, weapons, possibly personnel. They needed to intercept before the convoy reached the border. Anna's chest ached at the word convoy. The colonel's eyes lingered on her longer than the others. He didn't speak, but the warning was there. No hesitation this time.
The
The team moved out at dusk. Trucks rumbled across uneven dirt, headlights dimmed, engines grumbling like tired beasts. Dust choked the air, the horizon swallowing them whole. Anna sat in the back, rifle across her lap. Miller sat opposite, eyes on her, questions still unspoken. The others talked in low voices, trading jokes, filling silence with bravado. Human, fragile bravado. One of the younger soldiers, Harris, leaned back, helmet tilted, a grin trying to mask his nerves. First time out here, I thought the desert was empty. Now I know it's just waiting to kill us in 50 different ways. Another soldier laughed. You forgot 60. Even Miller cracked a faint smile. Anna didn't. She just listened. Because their words weren't really jokes, they were fears, dressed up and disguised. And in some way, that made them more human than the rifles in their hands. The convoy halted near a ridge. The team dismounted, moving low, rifles raised. Anna's boots sank into the sand, her body tuned to every sound. The crunch of gravel, the click of safeties, the hiss of wind through the rocks. They crept closer. Lanterns flickered ahead. Figures moved in the shadows. Anna raised her scope. Her chest went still. It was him again. The boy by his side again. It wasn't chance anymore. It was design. Fate pulling threads she couldn't cut. Her throat tightened, target in sight. Take it, the colonel's voice snapped through her earpiece. Her finger touched the trigger. But the boy turned, looked directly toward her ridge. And though he couldn't see her, couldn't know she was there, his gaze pierced through the scope. Innocent, searching, unaware. Her chest cracked open inside. Anna, Miller's voice whispered, "Don't freeze." Her heart screamed louder than the colonel's orders. Because this wasn't a target. This was her past standing in the valley, dragging her into choices she swore she'd never face. And if she pulled the trigger now, she'd lose more than just herself. She'd lose her daughter all over again.
the
Her finger trembled. The rifle clicked softly under her grip. And then before she could decide, gunfire erupted. Not hers. The valley exploded into chaos. Shadows darted, shouts echoed, bullets cracked against stone. Her team opened fire, the desert igniting in sound and light. Anna ducked, heart racing, scope swinging. The boy disappeared. The man vanished into smoke. Her chest heaved, every breath a question she couldn't answer.
the
When silence returned, it wasn't peace. It was absence. Bodies lay scattered, sand-soaked dark. Her ears rang, the world muffled. But of the man and the boy, no sign. Miller's voice cut through hoarse. They're gone again. Anna lowered her rifle, her hands trembling, her chest hollow. Because she knew, deep down, this wasn't over. The desert wasn't letting her walk away. And neither was he. What happens when silence becomes more dangerous than the truth you've buried?
the
The desert wind hadn't stopped since dawn. It scraped across metal, rattled loose tarps, carried whispers of dust into every crevice of the outpost. Soldiers moved like ghosts in daylight, silent, worn, faces harder than the sun overhead. Anna sat in the corner of the operations tent, hands clasped tight, eyes fixed on nothing. The room buzzed with radios, papers shuffled, boots paced. But she wasn't inside any of it. She was still back in the valley, smoke clinging to her skin, the boy's eyes burning in her scope, the man disappearing yet again into the chaos. The colonel's voice cracked through the noise. 2 encounters, 2 failures. Anyone care to explain why this phantom is still breathing? The air thickened. No one spoke. Miller shifted beside her, jaw tight. The colonel's gaze landed on Anna, sharp, accusing. Overwatch, you had him. Anna met his eyes. Her voice didn't waver, though her pulse thundered. It wasn't clear. Not clear. His tone was blade sharp. Half my unit is patching wounds because it wasn't clear. Miller stepped forward, tension radiating off him. Sir, with respect, chaos broke out before. Before what, Sergeant? The colonel cut him off, stepping closer. Before my sniper forgot how to pull a trigger. The tent went still. Every soldier's eyes flicked between them. Anna's jaw tightened. I don't miss. Then prove it. His words were low, deliberate, a challenge, a threat. Next time there won't be excuses. He turned sharply, signaling the end of the discussion. Maps slammed shut, orders barked, the room scattered. But the silence he left behind weighed heavier than command itself.
Yeah.
Outside, the heat wrapped around them like a furnace. Miller caught up to her, his voice low but urgent. Anna, what the hell is going on with you? She didn't stop walking. Focus on your orders, Miller. No, he stepped in front of her, blocking her path. His eyes searched hers, stubborn, unyielding. You don't get to shut me out when you keep freezing up out there. Twice now, you don't choke, ever, so what's different? Her chest ached under the weight of his stare. For a moment, she almost let it spill. The alley, the threat, the daughter she'd hidden behind walls of silence. But silence was safer. Her eyes hardened. Drop it. His jaw clenched. He stepped aside, but not without leaving a warning. Secrets get people killed. Don't let it be us.
Yeah.
That night she couldn't sleep. The cot felt like a cage, the tent too small, the air too heavy. She slipped out into the desert, rifle slung, boots sinking into cool sand. The stars above stretched endless, millions of silent witnesses to the weight she carried. She crouched on a dune, pulled the crumpled drawing from her pocket again. The edges were frayed now, worn thin from her touch. Her daughter's smile stared back, innocent, untouched. Her throat tightened. How long could she keep her two worlds from colliding?
Yeah.
At dawn, orders came swift. Intel placed the Phantom leader near a canyon pass, narrow, high-walled, perfect for ambush or for vanishing into stone. The unit was to move fast, cut him off, finish it. Anna's stomach knotted because she knew. She knew he wouldn't be there by chance. He wanted her there. He was waiting.
Yeah.
The convoy rumbled across jagged ground, engines growling, tires spitting dust. Soldiers clutched rifles, eyes scanning horizons for threats that might never come or might already be watching. Anna sat in the back again, Miller across from her. He didn't speak, didn't need to, his stare was enough. When they dismounted at the canyon mouth, the silence was suffocating. The cliffs rose high on either side, shadows long, air cool compared to the open desert. Every step echoed too loud, every crunch of rock a warning. They spread out, rifles raised, boots careful. Anna's scope swept the ridges. Nothing, just stone, shadow, silence. Then movement. A flicker on the cliff. A scarf, a figure darting, disappearing. Her chest tightened. Him. Contact ridge line, she whispered into comms. The colonel's voice snapped back. Take the shot. Her finger steadied, scope fixed. The Phantom moved again, scarf trailing, silhouette sharp against stone. And beside him, again, the boy. Her heart lurched. Overwatch fire. Her finger froze, breath caught. The boy stumbled, nearly fell. The man's hand caught him, pulled him close, protective, almost tender. Her vision blurred. For a flash she saw her own daughter in his place. Small, fragile, in the wrong place at the wrong time. Anna, Miller's voice in her ear, urgent now. Do it. Her chest cracked open. She couldn't. Her rifle wavered. And that was when the canyon erupted.
Yeah.
Gunfire rained down from the ridges. Shadows poured from the rocks, rifles blazing, voices shouting in languages that tore through the canyon walls. The unit dove for cover. Bullets sparked against stone, the air filled with dust and screams. Anna's rifle snapped up, instincts taking over. She fired, dropping figures on the ridge covering her team's retreat. Miller shouted orders, dragging Harris to cover, firing bursts that lit the shadows. But above them him, always him, moving like smoke, like shadow, untouchable. And the boy trailing, eyes wide, terrified. Her chest screamed. She fired again, deliberate, precise, dropping an enemy inches from the child. The man turned then, looked down at her. For the briefest moment, their eyes met across the chaos. Recognition, memory, a silent promise rekindled. And then he vanished into the rocks again.
The
Hours later, after the canyon fell silent, the unit limped back to base, bloodied, worn, angry. The colonel's fury scorched hotter than the desert sun. Another ambush, another escape. Tell me, Overwatch, do you plan on doing your job this deployment, or should I assign your rifle to someone with a spine? The words cut deeper than shrapnel. Anna stood rigid, face unreadable. Silence was her shield. Miller stepped forward, fists clenched. Sir, that canyon was a setup. Anyone would have struggled to. Enough, Sergeant, the colonel barked. You're not her mouthpiece, dismissed. The room emptied again, but not before Miller threw her a look. Not of anger, not of suspicion, but of something sharper, determination.
the
Later, in the quiet of the barracks, Miller found her sitting alone, rifle across her knees, head bowed. He sat opposite, silent at first, then softly, "That boy, who is he?" Her breath caught. She didn't look up, didn't answer. He leaned closer, voice low but unyielding. "You know him. Don't tell me you don't. I see it in your eyes every time. This isn't hesitation, it's recognition." Her chest ached, the walls she'd built shook. She whispered, so faint it barely left her lips, "He made me a promise." Miller frowned. "Who?" Her eyes finally lifted, haunted. "The man you call Phantom, 3 years ago. He told me one day I'd have to choose between this rifle and my daughter." The silence that followed was heavier than gunfire. Miller's eyes widened, the puzzle pieces locked, the hesitation, the silence, the boy. He leaned back, exhaling hard. "Jesus, Anna." Her hands trembled against the rifle. "If I tell command, she becomes a target. If I stay silent, we walk into his traps again and again. Either way, I lose." Miller's gaze softened. For the first time since this began, he didn't look like a soldier. He looked like a man shouldering her weight with her. "Then we carry it together," he said quietly. Her throat closed. A tear slipped, quick, unwanted. She wiped it away with the back of her hand, jaw tightening. The desert had taken much from her, but maybe not everything. What do you do when the truth in your chest is more dangerous than the bullets outside the wire?
the
The days after the canyon ambush stretched long, silent, unforgiving. The desert sun beat harder, as though it too demanded answers from her. Anna moved through routines like a ghost, rifle maintenance, briefings, patrols, every action precise, automatic. But inside she was unraveling. Every glance from the colonel burned sharper. He didn't need words. Suspicion oozed from his silence, heavier than any reprimand. He was watching her, waiting for her to stumble again. And Miller, he hovered too, but different, not suspicion, not judgment, something else. A quiet resolve. He carried her secret now, though unspoken. She hadn't given details, hadn't named the boy, hadn't explained the tangled knot of promises and threats. But Miller knew enough. Enough to understand her silence was no weakness. It was war.
the
One evening, when the heat had finally loosened its grip, and the camp was wrapped in the hush of dusk, Miller found her sitting alone again. The same crumpled drawing lay in her hand, lines worn thin, colors fading. "You keep that close," he said gently. Anna's eyes stayed on the paper. "It's all I have." Miller sat down beside her, careful not to crowd the fragile silence. "She your only." Her throat tightened. She nodded. 8 years old, thinks her mom's in another country doing office work. His jaw shifted. He exhaled slow. My sister's got 2 boys. They think I'm some kind of superhero. Truth is, I'm just hoping I make it home before they stop believing it. She glanced at him then. For the first time in days, her eyes softened. It was small, human, needed.
Yes.
But humanity was a luxury the colonel did not permit. The next morning, his voice cracked through the tent like thunder. Our phantom is bleeding us dry. We choke him off now, or we fail this mission. He slapped a map against the table. Red circles marked villages, routes, hideouts. At the center, like a stain, the canyon where they'd nearly been wiped out. We hit every lead, every contact. We close the net, and when he surfaces again, there will be no hesitation. His eyes snapped to Anna. Do I make myself clear? Her spine stiffened, her voice didn't break. Yes, sir. But the word tasted like ash.
Yes.
They moved again. Another convoy, another village. The streets were narrow, lined with mud brick homes, shadows deep where sunlight couldn't reach. Children played barefoot near walls pocked by old shrapnel. Women carried water jugs, eyes down, guarded. Anna's scope scanned rooftops as they moved, searching for the unseen. But all she saw were faces. Tired, hungry, wary. Ordinary lives caught in someone else's war. A boy ran past, laughter bright, dust flying at his heels. For a second her heart seized, too familiar, too close. She lowered her rifle, blinking hard. It wasn't him. Just another child with the same fragile innocence. But the phantom wasn't here. She could feel it. His absence was its own signature.
Yes.
That night the unit regrouped empty-handed. Frustration simmered like heat rising off asphalt. Soldiers muttered. Supplies dwindled. Morale cracked. The colonel's patience was fraying. His glare landed on her more often than not. Miller pulled her aside afterward, voice low. He's baiting you. He wants you to falter so he can pin this whole thing on you. She swallowed, eyes fixed on the horizon where stars pierced the black. Then I can't falter. Miller studied her, concern etched deep. You're human, Anna. You can't carry this alone. Her voice was a whisper. I don't have a choice.
Yes.
Sleep didn't come. It hadn't for nights. When she finally closed her eyes, the past returned, thick, suffocating. She was back in that ruined city. The air reeked of smoke and blood. Buildings groaned under the weight of fire. She had the phantom in her sight then too, but he hadn't raised a weapon. Instead, he'd pulled a child from the rubble, her child. Her scream had torn through the air that day, raw, primal, and he had turned, eyes meeting hers across the chaos. He hadn't fired, he hadn't threatened, he had only spoken, voice steady, almost gentle. One day you will owe me. And then he'd vanished into the smoke.
Yes.
She jolted awake, heart racing, sweat dampening her shirt. Her daughter's name echoed in her chest. Every breath was a plea.
Yes.
At dawn, new intel came. A small village north, reports of strangers, weapons moving through. The colonel's eyes gleamed with cold certainty. This is him. This is where it ends. The unit prepared, rifles checked, nerves taut. Miller lingered by her side as they loaded up. If he's really there, if it comes down to him or us, what are you going to do? Her throat closed. She didn't answer, couldn't. Because the truth was unbearable.
Yes.
The convoy rolled out under a sky painted red with dawn. Dust billowed, engines growled, tension coiled tighter with every mile. Anna sat rigid, rifle across her knees, eyes hard. Inside, her chest was breaking. Every mile closer was a mile nearer to the choice she couldn't make. Her duty or her daughter. The nation or her heart.
Yes.
At the edge of the village, they dismounted. The air smelled of wood, smoke, and earth. Dogs barked in the distance. Shadows flickered behind shuttered doors. They moved in carefully, boots crunching gravel, rifles raised. Every doorway felt like an eye watching. every silence a trap waiting to spring. Anna's scope swept roofs, windows, alleys. Her pulse thundered. And then movement. A figure darted into a doorway, too fast, too purposeful. Her gut clenched him. She whispered into comms, "Contact, North Building, second floor." The colonel's voice snapped like a whip, "Take him." Her finger steadied on the trigger. The shadow moved again, the scarf, the unmistakable presence. And then the boy stepped into the light. Her scope froze. It wasn't her daughter, but it was someone's son, small, afraid. Her chest splintered. Behind her, Miller's voice crackled over comms, low, urgent. "Anna, don't." The colonel barked again, fury rising. "Overwatch fire." Her breath caught. This was it, the choice promised years ago. Her nation, her duty. Or the fragile, unspoken vow she'd made to a little girl drawing on paper oceans away. Her finger trembled, the rifle wavered. And for the first time in her career, she lowered the scope.
Yeah.
The silence on comms was deafening. And in that silence, chaos erupted. What happens when your silence finally betrays you?
Yeah.
The shot never came. The boy slipped back into shadow, untouched, while the phantom scarf disappeared deeper into the building. And Anna's rifle hung useless, lowered by a trembling hand. The comms were dead quiet, except for the harsh crackle of the colonel's breath. Then his voice exploded. "Stand down, stand down. What the hell do you think this is, charity?" Miller cut in fast, his voice hard, covering her. "Sir, visibility was compromised. We need confirmation before wasting ammo." "Visibility," the colonel roared. She had him in her sights twice. The unit scrambled, storming the building, boots pounding stairs, rifles raised. But inside, nothing. Just empty rooms, shattered glass, dust settling where ghosts had been. He was gone again.
Yeah.
The ride back was a coffin of silence. No one spoke. No one dared. The colonel sat at the front, rigid, radiating fury. Anna kept her gaze locked on the desert rushing past the window. Her chest was a battlefield, duty on one side, love on the other, and both were tearing her apart. Miller sat across from her, eyes steady, calm, but his silence wasn't judgment. It was shield. She felt it, and hated that she needed it.
Yeah.
When they returned, the colonel didn't wait. He dragged her into the operations tent, slammed the flap shut, and stood over her like a storm ready to strike. "You think I don't see it," he hissed. "You think I don't know hesitation when I smell it." Anna stood at attention, jaw clenched, refusing to break. "You're compromised," he spat. "I don't know how and I don't care. But if you ever freeze like that again, I will strip you of that rifle and put you on the first bird home. Do you understand me?" Her voice was flat, unshaken. "Yes, sir." But inside, her knees threatened to buckle.
Yeah.
Word spread fast among the soldiers. Rumors hissed through tents like snakes in the sand. "She's slipping. Not the same since the canyon." Colonels watching her. Even Harris, stitched and limping but alive, avoided her eyes. Anna carried it all in silence. She couldn't defend herself, couldn't explain. Because how do you tell men who have buried brothers that your silence is tied to the fragile smile of a little girl oceans away?
Yeah.
That night Miller found her again. This time she wasn't sitting alone. She was disassembling her rifle piece by piece, movements sharp, precise, like she was punishing it. "You're breaking yourself," he said softly. She didn't look up. Maybe that's easier than breaking everyone else. He knelt beside her, voice low. "You're not the only one with ghosts, Anna, but if you keep carrying this alone, it's going to bury you before the enemy does." Her hands stilled. For a moment she let the weight of his words sink in, but then she set the rifle pieces aside and whispered, "I don't have the right to break." Miller's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, but he didn't. Because he knew.
Yeah.
2 nights later it happened. A radio crackled, distorted, then cleared into a voice thick with menace. Local dialect broke in English, but unmistakable. "The Phantom. I know you hear me," he said, voice dripping into the tent like poison. "I told you the day would come. You made your choice when you lowered the rifle. Next time it will cost more than hesitation." Silence fell heavy. Every soldier froze, eyes wide. And then click, transmission ended.
The
The colonel's fury lit like wildfire. "He's taunting us. He's inside our comms. He's inside our heads." His eyes landed on Anna, sharp as blades, "and I'm starting to think you invited him there." The room went cold. Soldiers shifted uncomfortably, glancing between them. Anna stood still, stone-faced, but inside panic clawed at her ribs. How had he known? How close was he watching?
the
Orders followed fast. They hunt him down, one last push. Every resource, every ounce of force thrown into the net. The mission was set. Track him to a remote stronghold in the mountains, cut him off, end it once and for all. The colonel made it clear. Failure is not an option. Hesitation is not an option. If you freeze again, Overwatch, don't bother coming back.
the
As the unit prepared, Miller found her, pulling her aside before boarding the convoy. "Anna, listen to me," he said, voice urgent, almost desperate. "This ends one of two ways. Either you take the shot or you tell me the truth, and I take it for you." Her chest ached, the words lodged in her throat. If she told him, if she laid it bare, she'd drag him into her war. She'd endanger him too. She shook her head. "No, you can't carry this." Miller's jaw set. "Then stop pretending you can." He walked away before she could answer.
the
The convoy moved at dusk. Engines growled low, headlights dimmed, soldiers silent as the desert swallowed them whole. The mountains loomed ahead, jagged teeth against a bruised sky. Wind howled through canyons, carrying the smell of dust and stone. Anna sat with her rifle across her knees, fingers tight, knuckles white. Her pulse hammered like a drumbeat. Every mile closer was another mile toward the promise he'd made, toward the choice she couldn't avoid.
the
When they reached the foothills, the unit spread out. Shadows stretched long. The night pressed heavy. Anna climbed to a ridge, her scope sweeping the valley below. And there, like a phantom out of myth, he appeared. The scarf, the stride, the unmistakable silhouette against firelight from a distant camp. Her breath caught. She whispered into comms, "Target in sight." The colonel's voice snapped instantly, "Take him." Her finger steadied on the trigger. But then movement beside him, small, fragile, the boy again. Her chest shattered. She froze. The phantom turned slightly as though sensing her. And though the distance was vast, though logic screamed it was impossible, she swore he looked straight at her. Straight into her scope. Straight into her. And his lips moved, slow, deliberate. "Not today."
the
"Overwatch," the colonel barked, rage uncoiled. "Do it now." Her rifle trembled. Miller's voice cut through the static, sharp but soft, meant only for her. "Anna, look at me. Not him, not the boy, me, right here. You're not alone." Her breath hitched, her finger hovered. And then gunfire erupted from below. The Phantom's men, hidden until now, opening fire, spraying bullets into the night. The valley lit with chaos. Anna ducked, fired back, instincts snapping into place. She dropped 3 men in quick succession, protecting the unit below. But through it all, the Phantom moved untouched, slipping deeper into the mountains, the boy trailing like a shadow tethered to his promise.
the
By dawn, the valley was theirs. Enemy fighters scattered, stronghold burning, but the Phantom was gone, again. And this time, the colonel didn't hide his fury. He cornered her in front of the unit, voice venom. 3 times, 3, and he lives. You're not just compromised, Overwatch, you're a liability, and liabilities get people killed. His eyes burned into hers. You've got one chance left. Fail again, and you won't have to worry about a court-martial. The desert will take care of you for me." The soldiers froze, stunned by the venom in his words, but none spoke, none dared. Anna stood rigid, eyes locked forward, heart pounding. And inside she knew. The final choice was coming. Soon. What do you sacrifice when both love and duty demand the same price? Yourself.
The
The colonel's threat hung over the camp like a storm cloud. Soldiers moved around Anna as if she were already marked, already condemned. Only Miller still stood near her, quiet, unyielding, his presence an anchor she didn't deserve. But she felt it now, the end pulling close, the phantom circling tighter, her secret screaming louder than the silence she'd wrapped it in.
the
3 nights later, it happened. Intel reported movement near the canyon where this all began. A convoy of black trucks threading the cliffs, heavy guard, too organized for smugglers. It was him. The colonel's voice on comms was steel. "This is it. No hesitation, no excuses. We take him here, we take him now." The unit moved fast, cutting through sand and rock, engines snarling. Anna rode in the lead vehicle, rifle ready, heart pounding. The canyon walls closed around them, red stone rising like cathedral spires. Shadows stretched long in the setting sun. And then the ambush. Gunfire exploded from the cliffs, echoing thunder. Bullets tore into steel, sparks flashing. Trucks screeched, soldiers dove for cover. Anna rolled out, rifle up, scanning high ground, targets everywhere. She dropped too fast, 3 more before they could reload. Her scope danced fire and fury. But through smoke and chaos she saw him. The Phantom, standing tall on the ridge, scarf whipping in the wind, and at his side the boy.
the
"Overwatch, do it!" The colonel screamed, voice cracking with raw rage. Anna's finger hovered. The boy's eyes met hers across impossible distance, wide, afraid, innocent. Her chest fractured. Miller's voice cut through again, urgent, fierce. "Anna, listen to me. Whatever this is, it ends tonight. You don't have to carry it alone. Say it, tell me." And finally, the dam broke. Her whisper shook as it left her lips. "He's mine." The word detonated in her chest, years of silence undone in a single breath. "My son."
the
The world narrowed. Miller froze, eyes widening in shock. The colonel's voice snarled through comms, venom dripping. "You're what?" But Anna had no time. Gunfire rained. Soldiers screamed. And on the ridge, the Phantom's gaze locked on hers, not with hatred but something worse. Recognition. He lifted the boy closer, shielding him. His voice, carried by the canyon wind, was sharp as a knife. "You see now, you can't kill me without killing him."
the
The colonel barked, "Take the shot, damn you, take it." Anna's body trembled, her rifle steady but her soul split wide open. Her son's face filled her scope, not the Phantom. His life hung on her finger. And she knew she could not fire, not without ending everything she had left to love.
the
Then Miller moved. He surged from cover, sprinting through open fire, climbing toward the ridge with reckless fury. Bullets sparked around him, dirt exploding at his feet. "Cover me," he shouted. Anna fired, not at the Phantom but at the men around him, cutting them down one by one. Her scope danced fire, protecting Miller's climb. The colonel screamed into comms, his voice lost in the roar of battle. Miller reached the ridge, tackling 2 fighters, driving them back. He grabbed the boy, shoving him behind cover. For a heartbeat, Anna saw her son's face clear. Wide brown eyes, trembling lips, a mirror of herself. Her chest shattered and healed all at once. He was real, he was alive.
the
The Phantom roared, lunging at Miller with a blade. Steel flashed, clashing hard. Miller fought with raw desperation, fists and fury against the ghost who had haunted them all. Anna's scope tracked them, heart racing, but she couldn't fire, not without hitting Miller. The fight was brutal, close, savage. The Phantom's blade cut across Miller's arm, blood spraying. Miller slammed him back, but the Phantom's strength was relentless. Then Anna saw it, the opening. Her finger tightened, her breath stilled. The rifle cracked. The bullet struck true. The Phantom staggered, eyes wide in shock, scarf falling loose as blood bloomed across his chest. He turned, meeting Anna's gaze across the canyon one final time. And he smiled. "You chose." Then he fell, crumpling into dust.
The
Silence fell heavy. Gunfire faded. His men scattered into the desert, their ghost undone. On the ridge, Miller pulled the boy close, shielding him as the sun sank behind stone spires. Anna's rifle lowered, her body trembling with the weight of everything she had done, and everything she hadn't.
the
When the dust cleared, the colonel stormed to her, eyes burning with fire. "You lied to me," he hissed. "You lied to all of us. Your silence has endangered every man here. You should be court-martialed. You should be buried where you stand." Anna met his gaze, no longer breaking. "I did what I had to do. I chose the shot that mattered." The colonel's jaw clenched. He wanted to strike, to rage, to destroy her, but he didn't. He turned away, seething. Because even fury couldn't erase what she had done. She had killed the Phantom. She had ended the war he carried. And deep down, even he knew, she had carried a weight none of them could understand.
the
Later, when the fires dimmed and bodies were counted, Anna found Miller with her son. The boy clung to him, eyes wide, still shaking. Miller's arm was bloodied, but his hand steady on the boy's shoulder. When he saw her, he said nothing, just looked at her, the truth between them now undeniable. She knelt, trembling, reaching out. Her son hesitated, then slowly he stepped into her arms. The world fell away. Her silence broke into sobs, muffled in his hair, his small frame pressed against her. She whispered promises through tears, words she hadn't dared believe she'd ever speak. "You're safe now. I've got you, I've got you."
the
The war didn't end that night. Wars never do, but something inside her did. The silence that had bound her, crushed her, kept her drowning, it finally broke. And though the colonel's eyes still burned, though whispers still followed her through camp, though nothing would ever be simple again, she had chosen. And for once the choice was hers.
the
Epilogue. Weeks later, when the unit prepared to redeploy, Miller found her sitting with her son beneath the edge of the desert sky. "You know this won't be easy," he said quietly. Anna smiled faintly, brushing sand from the boy's hair. "Nothing worth keeping ever is." He studied her, then asked the question that had hung unspoken for too long. Was he worth it? The silence, the risk? She looked at her son, at the life she thought she had lost, at the small hand now clinging to hers. "Yes," she whispered, "every second."
the
And that was how they counted her out before the war. Yet her resolve outlasted the silence of men.